Looks like Wednesdays are going to be my Titans return days for a while now. We've got a bunch of new toys to cover, and I do want to cover them. I just don't want to inundate you guys like I did last time. So, as I said before, it's going to be a one-a-week thing, and today we're looking at Chromedome. And this is an interesting one because even before it came out, people were already crying, remold! It's just the same toy as Dead End, and it has similarities, I will admit, but it does a few of its own things too, so we'll take a close look at it to see just how it came out. As you can see, he is a very futuristic car, very akin to his G1 self, done up pretty much like, well, it's a fairly boxy car. There's not a whole lot of aerodynamics going on here, but I don't mind the look. I still really like it's got this kind of retro futuristic take to it that I've always kind of admired. It's done up in brown, of course, as well as a few brown paint apps leading toward the back where it's a more beigeish or tan color. It's a nice and different look. Brown's not really used a lot in Transformer color palettes, at least not outside of Beast Wars or anything. The detail painting is pretty good. You do have the Autobot sigil right there on the front, as well as some blue for the headlights, and then his trademark paint job on the hood. Going toward the back, on these translucent black windshields, you can also see plenty of red painted on. Strangely enough, toward the back, the paint is coming down the windshield on the side, but not toward the back, so it creates this really weird cut off. That's kind of annoying. You also have the little bit of red here on the side too, so he's got some decent amount of paint here in his actual vehicle mode. Nothing toward the back, even though the tail lights are molded in. You even have some exhaust pipes molded, so at least the detailing is kept pretty good. Everything else looks pretty nice here. It's very much the G1 self. I will point out translucent black tires, which is interesting. I guess you can't do translucent black, so I guess this would be like a smoke gray, more or less. It kind of reminds me of the old Cybertron line where everyone from the Speed Planet, Velocitron, just happened to have translucent wheels for some reason. But yeah, that is what the vehicle mode is, but it's got a few other tricks to it. For instance, it has weaponry. It has one of these weapons, which I don't really like the look of because it creates this hollow part that doesn't really scream like solid weapon to me. But it's one of those figures, it's one of those weapons for Titan's Return that can mount another Titan Master in there, so he can side saddle somebody if he wants to. And you can see the pegs at the top, which will allow it to connect in a more traditional location. So you get some firepower in this mode. Also, it's not his only weapon, as he comes with this gun, which looks suspiciously close to the one Blur owns. But again, it can either be posted onto the sides, or we can do what I really think is a cool feature on these. Mount it on top, where the Titan Master can actually mount it like it's an actual mounted gun. That's actually really cool. So he's got some playability to him. No pegs again. Like the little pegs that were kind of all over the place in Wave 1, I'm not really getting in Wave 2. They just kind of abandoned that idea in the deluxes so far. I'm sure there's others that I've haven't really looked for them on, but for the ones I've reviewed so far, missing the pegs. So there is that. Beyond that, that's pretty much what the vehicle mode does. Wish they had more clearance. There we go. Doesn't quite roll as well as I would like it to. Okay, so let's get into robot mode, and we'll actually see just how dead end he is. Because this will feel familiar. It's as if the toy has been released like 10 times in the last year so far. But there's a few other tricks to it that give it a little bit of variety. For instance, if we pop this open, we can see Stylor rides inside. So we actually do have the Titan Master at the ready. And he's got a few deco changes, and by that I mean a complete lack of deco. It's very bright red that's getting washed out on my viewfinder, so I apologize if you can't see the detail, but he's a pretty basic Titan Master, and I believe another reuse from Blur. I can actually, hang on, because I actually do have Blur handy. Maybe if I can, oh yeah. It's the same mold. Okay, so they just reused Stylor and pre-molded it into Blur's head. Oh, that's a little bit disappointing. But hey, it's the same basic Titan Master if you haven't seen him by now. Ball joint in the neck, ball joint in the shoulder, and the thighs are a double hinge, and that's about all the articulation you get. So we'll set him aside, and we will continue here. The main new element of the transformation is, of course, the windshield folding up into the back of the legs. So that's pretty much the most of it. You'll also start seeing, this transformation for the legs is, this is very much dead end. It clipped differently, so it's a completely different set of molding, but it's an engineer borrowing, which is something Titans Return is doing quite a bit, and we'll get to that briefly. The arms are going to feel very dead end, so it does have that. At least the torso does have a little bit of difference in that you don't have to deal with those weird double hinges that made it weird and frustrating to get the head into place sometimes, and all this kind of clips really solidly together for the backpack. So with the body done up, let's go ahead and bring the Titan Master back in. Flip the legs like down, like so, and then head on. If I can get plugged in all the way. Yeah, I'm being stubborn. There we go. And with that, we have our completed Chromedome in robot mode, looking beefy, looking powerful, and feeling a little bit familiar. It's not a remold. Let's get that straight. Well, kind of. I'll get to that. But the what people were seeing as a dead end figure is warranted. It does borrow the same engineering, and it's solid engineering. Don't get me wrong, but it does make the toy feel quite familiar, and it does. It does kind of take some of the value out of the toy, but admittedly, it's still a good transformation, and it does actually work to make a modern Chromedome. So I'm going to give it a pass for now, because it's completely new parts. Like, not quite. I will get to that, trust me. Okay, so we take a look at the head. It is definitely Chromedome and much more IDW style. While the body keeps more to the G1, the head is definitely the Chromedome people now know. All you need is a little rewind sitting beside him, and he is good to go. I do really like the paint apps on the face, though. You do have everything represented correctly, and the chest is actually pretty lavishly painted itself with nice silvers and reds, along with a big bold Autobot sigil right there on the center. Here, the brown is pretty much taken over the toy, at least as far as the core section goes, where the limbs get to be that beige, and that's a nice little color balance. It's interesting because he's in no way desert related. Typically, these colors only come about if someone's in like desert camo or something, and here, this has always been Chromedome's signature look, and it still works for him. I like the browns and the reds. It actually goes pretty well together. Aside from all the paint on the chest, you do have a little bit more silver here on the shoulders, silver on the belly as well, which is not a detail I would have expected them to paint. And then toward the knees, you have a little bit of blue as well as a big wash of silver there. So you do have that silver touching just the right details and just covering enough in order to really feel like he's getting some color into his design. That's good. So beyond that, let's see, well, deco-wise, not a whole lot more can be said. He carries over some from robot mode, and he does have a pretty clean transformation. Aside from, like, windshields hanging off the back of his legs, I do like how everything kind of folds up and pegs into place. That's the important part. It all kind of goes into a solid little backpack that kind of presses into him. So, yes, it's a little bit of shell, but it's shell that's worn appropriately. I don't mind it whatsoever. This worked out pretty good. Let's go ahead and go to the articulation. So we do have, of course, the ball-jointed neck, thanks to the Titan Master. Ball-jointed shoulders, full range of motion there. The extra pieces here, the extra kibble, does kind of get in the way of some positions, but it's not terribly restricting. Thighs. I know what I'm talking about. I've done this a long time. Biceps rotate all the way around. You also have a pretty good elbow that hits the 90 degree, and nothing in the wrist. It's detented to move inward a little bit, but it's not a real good point of articulation. Waist joint, that's always appreciated. You have the full range in the thigh, the ball joint there, great range. You also have thigh swivel, which works pretty well. The knees, 90 degree, that works out. The feet don't have any kind of rock to them. They are slanted, so a slightly outward pose does have some extra balance to them, but for the most part, not a whole lot there. So this is pretty much the standard these days. You know, aside from every now and then I miss the waist joint on some figures, the toy itself does manage to be pretty posable. So that actually works out. Now through that little demonstration, if you notice a few parts look similar, let's actually discuss that now. So if you take a good look at this figure, the thighs are the issue here. No, they are not, they are fine. But if you take a closer look, you realize they are the exact same thighs that are on Titan's Return Blur. You can see the same mold gaps, the same molding along the sides of the knee, even the same knee gap. This is this weird thing that Titan's Return has been doing, where instead of like just straight up remolding like large figures, it will just take parts of a figure. Things are there just kind of filling space, or like just filling in for a job, like be the upper leg. And they'll just take it and use it on a different figure. And for the most part, they get away with it because, well, it's not a major detail that, you're not really going to see a whole lot of criticism for them reusing. And it lets them reuse parts and get away with it. That saves some budget for more molds. One thing I do notice about Titan's Return, we're getting a lot of stuff that's just straight up new molds. So if this is how they're getting away with it and how they're scraping the budget to get through that, I think it's pretty clever. Alright, speaking of, let's actually get his weapons in here. Now, the weaponry does have a few changes. There is a peg on the top here, so this can be mounted like so, and I prefer mounting it this way because it actually hides that hollowness and gives it a little bit more of a solid look. And then, of course, yes, he does have the same gun as Blur, so he also has double guns, double the firepower. Always a cool thing when you get more than one accessory. And of course they still combine in this mode too if you want to give him a much more heavy gun. I think, however, that is just about it for Hardhead. Oh my god, I'm on my game tonight. Yeah, I'm doing good. Chromedome. Is very nice to see Chromedome finally getting a little bit of love. Like other headmasters get some homages here and there. Chromedome kind of being like the centermost one from the original Autobot headmasters. Kind of surprised it took him this long to get a new toy, but worth the wait. Yes, it's very, very much dead end in how the toy transforms, but I think it has enough personality, and I think it comes together well enough to get away with it. I don't mind it so much. And yeah, it just looks like a good figure, and it is still a very solid figure. So if you're after your Chromedomes, this is not a bad option. When we get an IDW style one, then you will really catch my interest. But for now, this will do fine.